Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and look at what absolutely has to be one of the greatest, most baffling, unsolved mysteries in video game history. We're traveling all the way back to 1982. It's the golden era of gaming, and Atari has just launched this incredibly audacious competition. It's a story that has a little bit of everything: real-world treasure hunting, complex cryptography, a massive industry crash, and a lingering mystery that literally continues to baffle online sleuths to this very day. I want you to picture this for a second. Imagine a corporate contest so ambitious, so completely out there, that its conclusion ends up feeling more like a true crime heist, leaving behind a cold trail of missing gold. You see, this wasn't just some arcade high-score competition where you'd win a branded t-shirt or a free game. No, Atari was offering real, tangible treasure crafted out of actual precious metals and gemstones. And somehow, in all the corporate chaos of the 1980s, the bulk of this massive treasure just completely vanished from the public record. Just to set the stakes right out of the gate, the inflation-adjusted value of the prizes Atari promised to its players back in '82 sits at a staggering $265,000 today. That is well over $250,000 in pure, intrinsic material value. And honestly, that doesn't even factor in what these items would fetch at an auction today as one-of-a-kind pieces of video game history. So how did this all begin, and more importantly, where in the world did the treasure go? Section 1. The ultimate gaming treasure. So, Atari's SwordQuest series was meant to be this massive, four-part gaming epic. The whole idea was to completely shatter the boundary between the digital world on your television screen and the physical world you actually lived in. It was structured beautifully around four elemental games. First, you had Earthworld, which was based on the Zodiac, then Fireworld, based on the Kabbalah, Waterworld, centered around the chakras, and finally, Airworld, focusing on the elements. For every single one of these games, Atari commissioned the famous Franklin Mint to create a real-world treasure, each worth $25,000 at the time. We're talking about the Talisman of Penultimate Truth, the Chalice of Light, the Crown of Life, and the Philosopher's Stone. But wait, the ultimate goal was actually a fifth prize. The grand finale of this entire multi-year tournament was supposed to pit the four winners against each other for the Sword of Ultimate Sorcery. This piece alone was valued at $50,000 back in 1982. That translates to an incredible $135,000 today. This was, quite literally, the holy grail of gaming. And, as one commenter in our sources astutely pointed out, beyond just the raw gold, the silver, and the jewels, these five items are true one-of-a-kind artifacts. If any of these items were to show up at a modern auction house like Christie's or Sotheby's today, wealthy collectors and tech billionaires would likely pay millions for them. They are legendary pieces of art. Section 2. Solving the first riddles. Now, getting your hands on these treasures wasn't as simple as just beating a final boss. The dedication required was completely ahead of its time. By combining digital gameplay with physical comic books that came bundled with the cartridges, players had to navigate this insane multi-step logic path. First, you had to place specific items in specific rooms within the game. Doing that generated a pair of numbers, say 25 and 6. Then you'd physically grab your comic book, flip to page 25, look closely at panel 6, and try to find a hidden word buried somewhere in the artwork. And if that wasn't hard enough, players had to figure out extra meta-clues, like realizing they should only use words found on pages that were prime numbers. All of this just to uncover secret phrases like, "Quest in Tower Talisman found." It sounds impossible, right? But with incredible dedication, our first two real-world champions actually emerged. Those who managed to solve the puzzles at home were invited out to Atari's headquarters to speedrun special, altered versions of the games. Stephen Bell, who was a 20-year-old at the time, actually won the Earthworld contest in just 46 minutes, claiming the talisman. Shortly after that, Michael Rideout completed the Fireworld challenge in 50 minutes, taking home the Chalice of Light. Everything was going according to plan. The system was working perfectly. Section 3. The video game crash. But just as the SwordQuest phenomenon was really building momentum, we hit a massive plot twist. The landscape of the entire entertainment industry was about to completely shift beneath Atari's feet. The great video game crash abruptly destroyed the competition right in the middle of the 1980s. While the Earthworld and Fireworld contests went off without a hitch between late '82 and early '84, Atari suddenly faced catastrophic financial issues. Waterworld was given this very limited release only to Atari Club members, and before its contest could even take place, the company was bought out by businessman Jack Tramiel. Just like that, the remaining contests were pulled. Because Atari was facing financial ruin and was suddenly under new, incredibly strict management, that final game, Airworld, was essentially canceled. To avoid massive legal trouble from angry players, the epic grand finale was replaced with, well, pretty unceremonious cash payouts. Waterworld players who had submitted the correct answers got $2,000 each. And Stephen Bell and Michael Rideout, the guys who were eagerly waiting to compete for that magnificent sword, they were given $15,000 each and an Atari 7800 console. Section 4. Where did they go? This sudden cancellation brings us to the core mystery of our explainer today. The contests were dead, the payouts were made, but what happened to the physical treasures that were already produced? With the Crown of Life, the Philosopher's Stone, and the Sword of Ultimate Sorcery left completely unclaimed, over $100,000 in 1980s gold just vanished from the public record. And keep in mind, we know for a fact these items existed. They were displayed at promotional events, and clear photographs of all of them still survive. They were absolutely real. So, internet sleuths have been fiercely debating this for decades, and there are three prevailing theories. Theory 1 is that a secret playoff was held quietly to avoid lawsuits. Theory 2 suggests the Franklin Mint simply took the items back and melted them down for scrap. And Theory 3 is that Jack Tramiel, the new owner of Atari, just absorbed them into his family's private assets. Now, we can pretty much effectively rule out those first two theories. The cash payouts we talked about legally covered Atari's obligations, so there was no need for a secret playoff. And as for the Franklin Mint, representatives have explicitly stated there is absolutely no record of these items ever being returned or destroyed by them. Plus, honestly, why would you melt down a masterpiece that could be sold intact anyway? But here is where it gets really compelling. Look at this testimony from Todd Fry, a pivotal game designer who actually worked on SwordQuest. He points a finger directly at Jack Tramiel's family taking ownership of the remaining loot. When Tramiel bought Atari, he bought all of its physical assets. If the treasures weren't specifically listed to be liquidated during the sale, well, they legally became the property of his family. And to add a little fuel to that fire, while the family hasn't explicitly confirmed this, though I should mention they notably didn't deny ever owning them when asked, other Atari employees have reported actually spotting the Sword of Ultimate Sorcery hanging right above the mantelpiece in the Tramiel family home. Commenters heavily suspect that the remaining items might currently be hidden away, safe and sound, in private family trusts, just waiting to be rediscovered. Section 5. The Surviving Artifacts. Before we wrap things up, let's look at the divergent fates of the two prizes that actually were claimed by players. Because what happens when average gamers are suddenly handed thousands of dollars in solid gold? Well, it's a pretty stark contrast. Stephen Bell, who won the Earthworld Talisman, unfortunately ended up melting his prize down for cash to pay for his college tuition. A very practical move for a kid in the 80s, sure, but a painful loss for gaming history. Michael Rideout, on the exact opposite hand, kept his Fireworld chalice in pristine condition. He has safely stored it in a bank lockbox to this day, and he even occasionally shares photos of it online. Now, I know the melting of the talisman is a tragic loss to hear about, but there is a tiny silver lining. Stephen Bell didn't melt down the whole thing. At least a tiny fragment of it survived the crucible. He actually decided to keep the small white gold sword that adorns the very front of the talisman, so a piece of that specific treasure still lives on today. Which leaves us with one final, tantalizing thought. Somewhere out there, the Crown of Life, the Philosopher's Stone, and the majestic Sword of Ultimate Sorcery still exist. Are they boxed up in some dusty, forgotten warehouse? Or are they hanging quietly in a private estate? A literal king's ransom in video game history is out there, just waiting for the real-life quest to finally be completed.